Hi, and welcome to the Change Leaders Playbook, bringing you all things delivery and leadership in a podcast. Now, have you ever led customers or co-workers through changes in technology, processes, or culture? Now, these types of changes can be very emotive. Now, my guest today, Dileep Marway, is a senior technology and transformation leader with extensive experience leading people through the change curve. And today, I get to tap into his knowledge and to understand some lessons, his ideas on change and leadership. And with that, I'd like to welcome Dileep. Dileep, hi, good to have you on the show.
Hey Cliff, thanks very much for having me. So yeah, really excited about this. I know I've been bugging you for some time, so yeah, thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've been waiting for our conversation to happen, and now here we are. We've managed to get diaries aligned and stars to align, so here we go. So I'd really like to find out a bit more about you. I know quite a bit about you, but I'd love you to just tell everybody about you in terms of your career background, how you got to your current roles, how the current sort of career path that you're in, and ideally, if possibly, it'd be good to say a little bit about Lego too, because I can see some Lego in the background, and that's always an
Yeah,
interesting topic.
no worries at all. No worries at all. So I'll start with the Lego. So yeah, massive Lego fan. Just find it helps me to switch off, and I think just aligning that to my career, it's something that sort of I enjoy building. I enjoy putting things together. And I enjoy sort of seeing those fruits of those labor, and that's really important, right? So yeah, love building some Lego. Hopefully, get a few sets for Christmas. Keep me out of trouble. Keep me away from tinkering with something else in the house, which is probably a good thing, right? So in terms of career, so 19 years experience in technology. So essentially started off by actually working within quality. So worked as a tester, and that really gave me the right mindset in terms of quality really does matter, right? Customers, when you ask for something or when you're building something, making sure that you don't forget about what that goal is. So started off in testing, did a bit of delivery after that, did a bit of product, did a bit of engineering, did a bit of data work, and essentially started to put some of those skills together when I helped to set up The Economist in central Birmingham and helped us to set up a product engineering hub from scratch, which was brilliant, right? All about people, all around. It was like a family. Still talk to that family at the moment. Really important in terms of putting a goal together and helping The Economist to actually transform from just being a paper through the letterbox to essentially being a mobile app, being a website. Um, if I think back, I just think what a great bunch of people, right? Just people who are helping each other to better themselves and to be the best versions of themselves. After that, did a similar thing for a company called SHL. Essentially provided intelligence sort of aptitude tests when people graduate from university, so numerical and verbal reasoning. Did a similar role there, so helping to look after a team in India. And then after that, I essentially set up my own business called Be More Meerkat Limited. Bit of a funny name, but I did it because meerkats are curious. And I thought it's good for people to be curious, right? So essentially on the back of that, I was helping some companies in Saudi Arabia, so digitally transform. I also, after that, was sort of doing some modules on the MBA program at Aston Uni and supporting them around career tips and CV tips and helping people to get jobs after doing that master's. Then did a 6-month stint with the Football Association to basically help Gareth South getting the team with their data transformation, with supporting on their delivery, with actually helping set up a sort of architecture and solution architecture team together. And really pushing a DevSecOps mindset. So did that for 6 months, and then I was lucky enough to work with you, Cliff, for a year, which was great. And that was brilliant because it gave me variety. Got to work with some great clients. One that I can mention is Currys, for instance. Really enjoyed that. I actually went to Currys over the weekend, and it's just great looking at things and you're thinking, I remember when I was helping that project and I was delving into this. So really, really good. At the moment, I'm working for a company called PebblePad. So PebblePad essentially is a e-portfolio platform that helps learners document, reflect on, and showcase skills and achievements. So universities use our product. And my role at the moment is essentially I'm supporting with a data-driven transformation approach. I'm supporting the team to really push that delivery based on value, understanding what our customers want, and establishing what can we change in our practices to actually go quicker. So yeah, really enjoying it so far. It's only been 3 months. Outside of that, as you know, Cliff, I love writing blogs. Got my own blog site. I was writing for Forbes. I was writing for Harvard Business Review. Stopped doing that now because I'm struggling for time. But yeah, I'm still trying to help people. Still doing these sort of podcasts or chats that really matter to me. Outside of that, I'm a trustee for Black Country Living Museum, which I'm really passionate about. But yeah, I'd say I've been very lucky. I've got to help a lot of people, and the satisfaction I get is actually helping people. Right? It's seeing people grow. It's seeing people understand and go through a challenge and come to the point at the end where they can reflect and say, you know what, I've really learned here. I've really feel that I'm moving in the right direction. So seeing a smile on someone's face is what matters to me.
Yeah, that's excellent. And, I look at that and I think when in your experience that you've had with change leadership and taking people through changes and even implementing new technology, that's great. But what really matters is the experience that people have and getting them through the emotional aspects of it.
Right.
And quite often it's just not, it's overlooked, right? And I thought, no, it'd be fantastic to tap into your background experience in terms of how that happens in a way that's, I suppose, equitable and relational and
Yes.
enables changes to really land and be maintained. So with that, my next sort of question for you really is just around navigating the organization structures that needs to happen, which is important within sort of transformations and large change programs.
Yes.
How do you go about doing that? How would you personally do that in a way that doesn't completely lose people's confidence or lose people's connection with the changes at hand? What are your sort of tips in that space?
Sure. I think what's really important, firstly, is understanding that you've got people not just at one level, but you've got a multitude of people who are on different sort of segments of the journey. Some are further ahead, some haven't actually set off yet, or some people have tried and they're just disillusioned, right? So I think what's really important for me is, firstly, when going into a new role or when going into a change initiative, gathering as much data as possible to understand what people's viewpoints are and why are they at that level. And I think those little nuggets are really important, because what it tells you is, are you actually ready for that change? Or is there another initiative that you need to put in place that you can really push? And a really good example for me was in this new role that I'm in now, that there's a whole load of things that we need to do in terms of pushing that change and accelerating. But the most important for me thing when I joined was actually sending out a survey to people and just asking them, if you were me, what would you change? What's going well for you? What isn't going well for you? Gathering that input actually told me that the most important thing that was lacking was actually career progression frameworks. And that was the first thing that I started to implement, started to give people this is where I am now and this is where I need to go. And it's balancing that career with balancing what the company need. And while I'm doing that and helping people, I'm also speaking to sort of the board. I'm talking to the C-suite. I'm all ears. I'm probably more quiet in the first month. I'm just taking as much in. I'm writing my notes. I'm trying to extract information. But that's really important, to not just take the information from people who are telling you to do something, which may be pushing you more down a bias angle, but gathering as much information, taking a step back and then saying, what are my quick wins? What's really going to take people on the journey with me? And then once you've got that confidence, then it's a good idea to actually understand, this is a change that I want to implement. But I'd say it's completely normal for people to have that sort of, there's that curve, right? You've got denial. You've got people who are angry. you've got people who are confused. There's going to be some people who are in crisis. There's going to be some people who just accept it, which is great. But by the end of it, you want to take most of those people who are detractors and you want to turn those people to actually be in a new place where they can take that confidence and then move forward. So I think it's important to not just push the change. I actually think it's really important to reflect and say, do I have a good baseline that I can take roughly 80% of people on that change curve? Whereas normally when I go into roles, I see probably got about 40% here. Most people are detractors. I need to get that number up. I need to get that confidence up first. So I think that's a key learning for me. Probably say early in my career, I probably would have been one of those who was more stuck into just say, you know what, day one, push the change. Let's just see what comes out. And you've got a lower success rate. Whereas now I understand the importance of patience. I understand the importance of reflection. I understand the importance of reflecting at certain points and moving forwards.
Sometimes I think there is a time to push change, but it depends who to and when and
Right.
the scale of it, right? But for the most part, I think you're dead right. You can't just drop something on people and expect it to actually work and stick and then be
Correct.
utilized. There's also an element there around in pushing change to people internally versus your clients or customers. That opens a whole new sort of can of worms in terms of how best to extract information, like you said, and also respond appropriately and manage the
Yes.
right messages as well. So I think there's lots in there. In terms of there's lots of books written about change curves and managing change management, things like that. What I'm actually more interested in is your own personal take on the things that you've learned and what you would do again differently if you had a chance.
I think the thing for me is sort of in my head, Cliff, how I understand how something will go versus how it actually goes, and trying not to just interpret that everyone thinks the same. And I think that's really important, and that's something that I definitely share with people, that don't always assume. I think it's a good idea to speak to people first, just to get their take, to understand risks, to understand, do we have any issues, to understand, is there something else that's holding us back? And I think that's the biggest learning for me, that I definitely say now I'm in a position where if I do have to push change, and that's an urgent change need, I will raise those risks. I will be very clear on, this is the risk of doing this. If as a team we then say, you know what, we still need to do it, we understand that impact and we've made that decision as a team. Though I'd probably say initially it was probably one of those where I was a bit more hell-bent just to make the change. So I think the key learning for me is probably understand whether you need to make the change. And one question that I've always asked myself now is, what's the impact of us actually not doing this? And I think another one that I've had to bring in, and this is more so because I think when you're working with a board, when you're working with an SLT, that they don't have the time to understand the journey. So the most important thing to them is fast information that allows them to distinguish what they need in that instant. And that's where data has been really important. So if I can't implement data on top of a change, it's far harder for me to keep that higher level on the journey, which has led me to actually then say, do we actually need to make that change, yes or no? And that's been really important for me. So if I'm thinking about things like AI initiatives, and I'm pushing an AI initiative on my team, what data can I gather? Can it be qualitative? Can it be quantitative? And I think that's really important. That's the big learning for me now, Cliff, that I'd probably say 5 years ago, you could go more with sort of qualitative information and it worked. Whereas now you've got sort of C-suite, or you've got people who don't have the time. The only thing they'll understand is that number. Is the number a 5 out of 5, or is that number a 1 out of 5? If it's 1 out of 5, we're going to pull the plug. 5 out of 5, love the idea, give me another one, right? So I think that data piece for me is probably that's probably the biggest change that I've seen in my approach. And that really matters. So I think that data-driven approach is probably the most important thing that I'd say that I've seen a shift in. And I also think with the push around AI, with with people having less confidence, I've definitely seen more of a push now towards the data-driven approach. And that's really important as a leader, because what you're now doing is you don't have the time to look after such a large team and then look at every initiative. And that's where I feel data on anything now is the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think data before, like you said earlier on, but also data during, to help us to
Right.
make the right choices around, is what we're investing in
Yes.
still relevant, still creating value, or actually is there something else that's more valuable, or do we just stop it or pause
Yes.
elements of it? Not
Yes.
necessarily all of it, but just elements of what we're doing.
Mhm.
And that data-driven approach, I find, has been more utilized over the past few years, and more,
Right.
and actually creates a more fast-paced decision making and
Mhm.
fast-paced ability to pivot and capitalize on investments in the right areas.
Right.
So that's really what I'm seeing in terms of the technology industry anyway, and it is the way forward from what I can gather. One of the things I really wanted to get from you was also about programs failing, and you've worked on many initiatives of many different organizations. One of the areas where you think, gosh, these are the themes that I'm seeing which cause key initiatives to not be as successful as they ought to be. I think
Yes.
you've probably touched on one of them around gathering data, but there must be others in terms of managing people, managing circumstances and external environments, all those sorts of things. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Sure. So I definitely say that the first thing why I think feel programs generally do fail is a bit of a fear of failure. So it's a bit like what people will essentially have is they're so scared of not delivering, it means that they won't take a risk. But it also means that they set themselves up to fail because they're not people generally, when they're worried, it causes stress and people start to go in their shell. And what you essentially find on the back of that is the communication drops. Actually, by the communication dropping, you're actually raising the risk, which then raises the amount of issues. So the first thing I'd say is, as leaders, I think it's really important to give confidence to your team such that they can make decisions themselves. Can they deliver in the time that they need to deliver? If they can't, is the scope right? Have they actually critiqued the values so much that they understand in the time that they've got, they know that they can still get enough value out of it? That's the first one that I'd say. The second one that I'd definitely bring up is people speaking the same language. And what I mean by that is, I've been an engineer myself, right? So you're talking and you're really proud of a framework, you're really proud of an architectural piece, and you're just talking because you're passionate, right? You love it. It's coming out in that way because you've spent months on a framework. You've spent evenings and nights trying to get this thing to work, and it finally works, and you're thinking, God, I've finally done it. I need to tell everyone. But are you speaking a language that everyone in your team understands? Whether that be a technical person, whether that be a junior, whether that be someone who's never touched tech in their life. And what essentially happens is you've got people speaking so many different languages that a client's asked for a red car. By the end of it, you've actually given them a gold car, right? And I think that for me, I've been in so many meetings, Cliff, where I've just said, let's simplify. Give me an analogy for what you're trying to say. And I think that's really important, that a successful program or project for me, and you know this better than me, Cliff, because you've done massive ones, but it's essentially making sure that you can keep everyone on the journey along the way. And as you start to drop people off, what starts to happen is then little holes start to appear, little cracks start to appear. Before you know it, you've got a leaky house, right? And then you've got a broken house at the end, and the client wanted a brand new house, right? So I think that's one big learning for me, just that sort of making sure that everyone's speaking the same language. And that's something that you've also done sort of in a consultancy role, Cliff. It's very, very key. It's actually going into those meetings and taking a step back and actually seeing whether you can see those signs. How are people talking? How are people explaining technical things? Are they explaining them in a non-technical way? Are people smiling? Do people look like they're enjoying work? And they're probably the cues that I didn't focus on enough initially, Cliff, when I did these sort of roles. Initially, it was more so done a Prince 2 qualification, got my book out, written a list of, do I have risks? Tick. Do I have my issues listed? Tick. Are we using Jira? Tick. And then you'd think at the end, God, I'm still delayed it. I've done everything. I follow Prince too. It's all great. But I think it's those learnings, or those sort of, some people say sort of the scars that you have, that you've learned from, that then lead you to ask those certain questions that you have. So things like, you'll probably see me talking a lot about, have you thought of a plan B? Will the rollback plan actually work? A lot of those questions actually come from things that have gone wrong probably at the start of my career. And I think that's really important, right? You take those with you and you ask those questions to try and help people through. And that's what I really value, right? It's using that experience to help as many people as possible, so that they can then take that question and they can ask that question if I'm not in that meeting, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's as you were speaking, there were so many things that came to my mind that I can definitely resonate with, and some new insights as well. It also reminded me of a few things, which just brings back some scars actually. So I'll just tell you what they are. One of them is not setting clear direction of expectations. So from a leadership perspective, it's one thing setting a lofty goal and lofty vision and all the rest of it, but then actually saying, this is what I need from the team. This is what I need, what great is going to look like. And then continuing to reiterate that consistently to the team, especially as new people come in and old people leave. That is what I've seen that's as cause, or lack of doing that for me has contributed towards unsuccessful programs. And it seems like a straightforward thing, but it's actually critical, because that continuous thread is missing and it's lost. So that's one thing that you reminded me of. Also, people spinning too many plates. Now, being busy and active and working long hours, there's a time for that. And of course, it can be very fruitful. But if you do spend a lot of time doing too many things, you're not doing many of them very well. And so where I found I'm more productive in a role in leading changes, where I focus on the big things almost one at a time. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if I focus hours and hours on one thing, then move on to the next thing, it allows me to really think clearly and deeper on that thing and resolve it better without kicking the proverbial can down the road, actually. And that's one of the things that I've been learning over the past few years, that this is it's actually a better use of time to solve problems than trying to solve them all at the same time and multitask, which I can't do. You mentioned about the looking at the plan Bs. And I think you're completely right, because the happy path is always the one that people spend the most time on, and almost ignore the other options and other possibilities of what could happen, which invariably do happen. And then the third thing which you reminded me of was not saying that you don't understand things. I have these many visions of people talking in meetings and talking about amazing sounding things. But when I leave the meeting, I just sit there thinking, does anybody actually agree on what we're going to do next? We're actually all speaking about the same thing in the first place? And does everybody actually understand the terminology that each person was using, which is exactly what you just said earlier on? And I think a lot of that is getting your pride out of the way. So admitting, I don't understand that word. What is it? Can you explain it further? And then we can have a more meaningful, sensible conversation. And so you just brought back so many flashbacks to me when you were saying that, and I just thought I wanted to get that out. But very therapeutic, very good to hear.
Thanks for sharing. I enjoyed that. Enjoyed that reflection.
I'm really keen to understand you as a leader, as an individual leader. From my experience with you, you're a great leader of not just teams, but people, in terms of individuals, and very relational. I want to tap into some of that here, so you can share some of your lessons and how you go about doing that. So how would you go about getting the best out of your team, individuals, and even growing them as people in terms of their own capability?
Great point, Cliff. I think firstly, you need great people to lead. And I think that's really important for me. So yeah, really enjoyed helping you. You helped me far more than you probably know, is the first thing that I'd say. I think for me, what's really important is firstly understand sort of the person behind the title. And I think that's really important as a leader to try and understand, where is that person now? Where do they want to be? And how are they, not just in their career, but in their life situation, right? Do they need some support? Do they need someone to just talk to about things outside of work? Are they at a point in their career where that they need to slow down for a bit because they've got so much going on outside of work? And I always say these things balance out at work, right? So know where your team is, know sort of where they need more support versus when they don't need support. And I think what's really important for me is actually just making sure that you're giving people those tasks that will actually help them grow and will enthuse them to grow. Because sometimes I've been in situations where you give people a task, but you just see, you know what, this role isn't right for them. They're not enjoying it. They're not learning. It's not pushing them. And I think it's important to have those conversations. So for me, I feel that a career progression framework, I touched on this before, is really, really important because it allows the person to drive their career. But it allows me as a leader to be satisfied that, you know what, I've given this person the right sort of framework. They've got a chance here. They can be successful. And I think that for me is the most important thing, that give people a chance. Let people know that there's a framework there that can help you. But also I think in the times where we are now, there's a lot of people who are concerned, right? You've had COVID, which has been really, really tough for people. You've now got AI, and you've got news articles that are saying that people aren't going to have jobs, right? So what you're doing as a leader is you have to listen to people. You have to help people through. AI is a great enabler and it can help people. But if it's stopping people thinking, companies got a bigger problem. So it's making sure that it enables people to actually take their thinking from a level 3 to a level 5. And that's really important as a leader. And how do I feel that you can bring about these type of changes at the moment? It's making sure that you're people led. It's making sure that you've got the trust of your team. And it's also seeing that as a leader, I just find it's really good to be honest with people. When people do a good job, tell them they've done a good job. When people don't do something well, tell them that you haven't done this well and this is how we can do it better, but get them to understand the why. And I think that's where engineering's really changed so much, because it's gone from, if I look at 5-10 years ago when I was sitting there sort of as a data engineer, drafting out lots and lots of data and then getting the data to tell me what the intelligence was. Did I understand that in detail when I first did it? No, I just gave a report to some senior executives and gave them a few lines of, don't insure these type of people. Whereas what you're seeing now, Cliff, is you're seeing people have to understand the why. People have to understand the value. Because if you don't understand the value and you're just cutting code, most likely we won't have a team in a bit, because AI will probably give that value, right? So I think there's a level now where not just anyone in a role has to level up, but as a leader, the people side and the people leadership side is even more important, because you have to really help your team to level up. Being a 2 or 3 out of 5 that you may have got away with 10, 15 years ago, probably can't cut it in most organizations now, right? So I think it's really important, those talking to your people, understanding their concerns, helping them through is even more important now. And I've just noticed that pace of change now, Cliff, is completely different. Before you probably had a curve that was like that. Now you've got a curve that everyone wants that, right? And I think that's where that people-centric leadership really helps. And I haven't changed that approach. If anything, I've tweaked it to just add a bit more data on top. So whereas before I may have had a bit more time to coach, slightly slower, what I now do is I can take data and say, this is where our data is now. What do you believe we can do to take that data up? So it's a slightly different, nuanced approach, but the people side is still there, I'd say, Cliff.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at things, especially as the world is evolving big time. So that gives me another thought around something which would be really good to get your opinion on, really, which is you talked about AI, you peppered AI a few times, and which is only right. And you talked about people's almost taking ownership of their careers. What would you say? What sort of guidance would you give to somebody now in terms of someone in the tech industry or somebody who works in on programs to think about the advent of new technology that's coming now? What would you say to them in terms of being able to stay ahead of the game or to keep themselves current so that they can embrace what's happening now, embrace the future, and maintain relevance? And I'm saying that with the thought process that the roles that exist today probably will not exist in the same format tomorrow, and new roles which don't exist today will exist in the near future. So, what's your take on that?
I think for me, I'd firstly say don't fear the change. It's a bit like that. I remember a very long time ago, and when I started off in testing, Cliff, you had these shiny new automation tools, and you had all these people thinking, "Gosh, testers aren't going to be here, right?" And they are still here. They've just worked out a way to actually use the enabling technology, which is automation, and they've used that to their benefit, right? Because they've leveled up in terms of thinking outside the box. And I think AI is exactly the same, Cliff. What I'd say to people is look at areas of your role where it can really help you level up, and then see those other areas where it can't, and just make those 10 times better. And I think that's really important in terms of if I look at myself and there's a certain decision and I'm thinking, you know what, I don't really know what to do in this decision. I need something to get my brain going, right? A bit like the oranges that people have on a football pitch at half time back in the day, where people brought in the oranges, cut them in half, and they say, you know what, we played rubbish first half. We need a bit of a boost, bit of vitamin C. Have some of those oranges, and then you're good to go that second half. I see AI as exactly the same. If I need that little boost, if I want to know what other companies are doing, if I don't know how to take people on the journey of change, use it. Use it as that Kickstarter, use it as that ignition, and then go from there. And I think for me, tech has always moved super fast, as you know, Cliff. I think if you sit there thinking about what is going to happen in 5 years, essentially you've lost a bit of time where you can actually try and get ahead yourself, right? So I think for now, for me, Cliff, what I'm saying is live in the now, understand the challenges that you're facing, understand the problems that you're looking to solve, and keep doing that, because people will always need problem solvers, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's an important mindset for me personally, to not say, what do I need to level up in? It's more so, what value can I add on a daily basis? Can I get rid of some of my Post-its on my desk? And you know what I'm like with my Post-its. So yeah, I think that's probably the important mindset that I'd recommend to people, that don't get caught up in the worry of what's going to happen. Have control of sort of where you are now.
Yeah, that's a great way to conclude your sharing of knowledge, for sure. I'm going to give you a really, really quick opportunity to ask me a quick question before we wrap up. So if you've got anything that's been burning that you've been wishing to ask for ages, but now's the chance to do it.
Sure. I'll stick to my AI theme, Cliff. So I was going to ask, from a delivery perspective, so from a project and program perspective, what changes have you seen in this area that really excite you around delivery?
So I would like to say that I can see a way where you can just say a word and a massive, incredible plan comes out and everyone's names are assigned to it and they all agree on it. That hasn't happened yet, so I'm just hoping for somebody to create that for me, in which case my job will be a lot easier. But what I have seen, though, is things that probably everybody is starting to use now, which is when I'm sat on my own trying to think of ideas around how to go about solving a problem, using AI as a sounding board is really useful, and it helps me to get to problems quicker. And then I can start using that brainstorming exercise to come up with a solution and a way forward. That's been great because it means I don't have to always wait for a meeting or wait for certain people. And it helps me to refresh my ideas and come up with new ideas based on the suggestions that AI has come up with. I've found that really valuable. Has it taken work away from me? Not really, to be quite frank, but it's helped my thought process to be more efficient and more effective, which means hopefully I've been more effective as a result of that. In the short to medium term, I'm hoping and I'm expecting that AI will be utilized from a sort of delivery leadership perspective in a way that helps people to do less admin, like less creating PowerPoints, less, like you say, creating plans, and more thinking and relational activities, spending time with people. That's where I'm hoping AI to go to. And I'm a big advocate for that. And let's see what happens in the future.
Brilliant. That was really interesting. Really great thoughts. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me, Cliff.
You too. It's been a pleasure. Do you have one final thought to say before we wrap up at all? One message you want to give?
I think it's just keep learning is what I'd say to people. And one thing that advice that I've always given to people that I look after is just make sure that you're learning one new thing a day, whether that be in an interview or whether that be with someone else. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. That's a great way to wrap up. I always say learn one new thing as well regularly, and also try and do one thing that scares you as often as possible, ideally
I like
daily. And if that does happen, I think you'll be better for it. But yeah, Dileep, thanks as always. It's been a real pleasure having you on. Hopefully we'll catch up again another time. Thanks, Dileep. All the best.
Thanks, Cliff. Much appreciated.